Okay, I am back. I'm house sitting again, and I was so excited to find that the house that I'm sitting has an HP Lovecraft collection. So I'm gonna read about dreams and nightmares, and I hope you enjoy. I've already read the first story is Azathoth, I think, and I've already read that one on stream. So I'm gonna start with The Descendant. And yeah, I hope you enjoy. Okay, The Descendant. Writing on what the doctor tells me is my deathbed. My most hideous fear is that the man is wrong. I suppose I shall seem to be buried next week. But in London, there is a man who screams when the church bells ring. He lives all alone with his streaked cat in Gray's Inn, and people call him harmlessly mad. His room is filled with books of the tamest and most puerile kind, and hour after hour he tries to lose himself in their feeble pages. All he seeks from life is not to think. For some reason, thought is very horrible to him, and anything which stirs the imagination he flees as a plague. He is very thin and gray and wrinkled, but there are those who declare he is not nearly so old as he looks. Fear has its grisly claws upon him, and a sound will make him start with staring eyes and sweat-beaded forehead. Friends and companions he shuns, for he wishes to answer no questions. Those who once knew him as scholar and aesthete say it is very pitiful to see him now. He dropped them all years ago, and no one feels sure whether he left the country or merely sank from sight in some hidden byway. It is a decade now since he moved into Gray's Inn, and of where he had been he would say nothing till the night young Williams brought the Necronomicon. Williams was a dreamer, and only 23, and when he moved into the ancient house he felt a strangeness, and a breath of cosmic wind about the grey wizened man in the next room. Oh my god, my favorite people are here. Hi Ulysses, hi Martello. Okay, I'm gonna keep reading. He forced his friendship where old friends dared not force theirs, and marveled at the fright that sat upon his gaunt, haggard watcher and listener. For that the man always watched and listened, no one could doubt. He watched and listened with his mind more than with his eyes and ears, and strove every moment to drown something in his ceaseless poring over gay, insipid novels. And when the church bells rang, he would stop his ears and scream, and the gray cat that dwelt with him would howl in unison till the last peal died reverberantly away. But try as Williams would, he could not make his neighbor speak of anything profound or hidden. The old man would not live up to his aspect and manner, but would feign a smile and light tone, and prattle feverishly and frantically of cheerful trifles, his voice every moment rising and thickening, till at last it would split in a piping and incoherent falsetto. That his learning was deep and thorough, his most trivial remarks made abundantly clear, and Williams was not surprised to hear that he had been to Harrow and Oxford. Later, it developed that he was none other than Lord Northam, of whose ancient hereditary castle on the Yorkshire coast so many odd things were told. But when Williams tried to talk of the castle and of its reputed Roman origin, he refused to admit that there was anything unusual about it. He even tittered shrilly when the subject of the supposed undercrypts, hewn out of the solid crag that frowns on the North Sea, was brought up. So matters went till that night when Williams brought home the infamous Necronomicon of the mad Arab Abdul Alhazred. He had known of the dreaded volume since his 16th year, when his dawning love of the bizarre had led him to ask queer questions of a bent old bookseller in Chandos Street, and he had always wondered why men paled when they spoke of it. The old bookseller had told him that only 5 copies were known to have survived the shocked edicts of the priests and lawgivers against it, and that all of them were locked up in frightened care by custodians who had ventured not only found an accessible copy, but had made it his own at a ridiculously low figure. It was at a Jew's shop in the squalid precincts of Clare Market, where he had often bought strange things before, and he almost fancied the gnarled old Levite smiled amidst tangles of beard as the great discovery was made. The bulky leather cover with the brass clasp had been so prominently visible, and the price was so absurdly slight. The one glimpse he had had of the title was enough to send him into transports, and some of the diagrams set in the vague Latin text excited the tensest and most disquieting recollections in his brain. He felt it was highly necessary to get the ponderous thing home and begin deciphering it, and bore it out of the shop with such precipitous haste that the old Jew chuckled disturbingly behind him. When at last it was safe in his room, he found the combination of black letter and debased idiom too much for his powers as a linguist, and reluctantly called on his strange, frightened friend for help with the twisted, medieval Latin. Lord Northam was simpering inanities to his streaked cat, and started violently when the young man entered. Then he saw the volume and shuddered wildly, and fainted altogether when Williams uttered the title. It was when he regained his senses that he told his story. Told his fantastic figment of madness in frantic whispers, lest his friend be not quick to burn the accursed book and give wide scattering to its ashes. There must, Lord Northam whispered, have been something wrong at the start, but would have never come to a head if he had not explored too far. He was the 19th Baron of a line whose beginnings went uncomfortably far back into the past. Unbelievably far, if vague tradition could be heeded, for there were family tales of a descent from pre-Saxon times, when a certain Lunius Gabinius Capito, military tribune in the 3rd Augustan Legion, then stationed at Lindum in Roman Britain, had been summarily expelled from his command for participation in certain rites unconnected with any known religion. Gabinius had, the rumor ran, come upon the cliffside cavern where strange folk met together, and made the elder sign in the dark, strange folk, whom the Britons knew not save in fear, and who were the last to survive from a great land in the west that had sunken, leaving only the islands where the wroughs and circles and shrines of which Stonehenge was the greatest. There was no certainty, of course, in the legend that Gabinius had built an impregnable fortress over the forbidden cave, and founded a line which Pict and Saxon, Dane and Norman were powerless to obliterate, or in the tacit assumption that from this line sprang the bold companion and lieutenant of the Black Prince, whom Edward III created Baron of Northam. These things were not certain, yet they were often told, and in truth the stonework of Northam Keep did look alarmingly, did like the masonry of Hadrian's Wall. As a child, Lord Northam had had particular dreams when sleeping in the older parts of the castle, and had acquired a constant habit of looking back through his memory for half amorphous scenes and patterns and impressions which formed no part of his waking experience. He became a dreamer who found life tame and unsatisfying, a searcher for strange realms and relationships once familiar, yet lying nowhere in the visible regions of the earth. Filled with the feeling that our tangible world is only an atom in a fabric vast and ominous, and that unknown dimensions press on and permeate the sphere of the known at every point, Northam in youth and young manhood drained in turn the fonts of formal religion and occult mystery. Nowhere, however, could he find ease and content. And as he grew older, the staleness and limitations of life became more and more maddening to him. During the 90s, he dabbled in Satanism, and at all times he devoured avidly any doctrine or theory which seemed to promise escape from the close vistas of science and the dully unvarying laws of nature. Books like Ignatius Donnelly's chimerical account of Atlantis he absorbed with zest, and a dozen obscure precursors of Charles Fort enthralled him with their vagaries. He would travel leagues to follow up a furtive village tale of abnormal wonder, and once went into the desert of Araby to seek a nameless city of faint report, which no man has ever beheld. There rose within him the tantalizing faith that somewhere an easy gate existed, which, if one found, would admit him freely to those outer deeps whose echoes rattled so dimly at the back of his memory. It might be in the visible world, Yet it might be only in his mind and soul. Perhaps he held within his own half-explored brain that cryptic link which would awaken him to elder and future lives in forgotten dimensions, which would bind him to the stars and to the infinities and eternities beyond them. Ooh, that is a good one. I love that so much. I just wanted to show you this cover because it's so surreal. I love this so much. It's so creepy. Okay, let me zoom in from the other camera because the back camera is better. Okay, so check this out. There's this, like, I don't know what it is. It looks like half corpse, but like with no eyeballs. And there's like a dog skeleton that's like floating above a crescent moon, which, by the way, it was a full moon last night. For fun, we're just gonna say that the full moon energy is still here. This is blowing my mind because this looks like a creepy animal that I've seen in a hypnagogic state and drew once. It's like a crazy creature, like turning a crank or something. And then there's this like corpse mummy just kind of hanging out in an alcove right there. I love that. I mean, I don't even know what this is, but there's like a sacrum and some feet hanging out of this orb. So, and then there's these like Escher stairs going on and like random skulls hanging out on top of the stairs. Very cool. Okay, and look at the spine. Check this out. There's just like a torso hanging on a hook. I love it so much. What is this? What is that? I don't know. It's like an armadillo or even a skull. I don't know. I'm going to call it an armadillo because that feels more fun. Oh, no, it's not. It's a body. Okay, whatever. Okay, look at this guy. Just like a screaming disembodied head and like a bird spine. I love this cover. It's so good. Oh, there's another one. Just like tormented disembodied heads floating in this surreal nightmare. Okay. Next story. I'm guessing The Thing in the Moonlight. Okay. Probably The Thing in the Moonlight. How are you guys? Shiva loves you. I love your name. Thank you. I love the Hindu religion. I love reading about the Hindu religion. So Shiva's pretty cool, man. Okay. I am by no means an expert, but I read a textbook once and it was amazing. Like some of the cool, I'm a big fan of Eastern philosophy. I find it really cool. Like, I don't want to come off sounding like a douchebag, but in a civilization as old as India, I feel like they probably know a few things about philosophy that Western philosophers just like don't get. I don't know. I'm not trying to sound like a douchebag, but it really helped my life to read a textbook about Hinduism and like non-dualistic Shiva Tantra. So like anyway, I'm getting off topic. I'm gonna read more HP Lovecraft. Okay. I feel winded, like just sitting here reading. I'm getting over like a bad cold. Okay, so like I didn't really tell anybody, but I ended up in Austin for a week because I was hanging out with some friends. I don't want to say too much, but I ended up like jumping in the van with some friends and going to Austin. And they were all sick, but we had fun anyway. So now I'm getting over like whatever horrible flu that I had while I was in Austin. But it was a good time anyway. A whole bunch of videos that I put in that I just uploaded a video this morning, and a whole bunch of clips I used were from my trip to Austin. So check that out if you haven't seen it. The next story in here is The Thing in the Moonlight. Let me see how long this is. Oh, good. It's just a page. Okay, I'm gonna read this one because it's like 2 pages, and I can handle that in my weakened state. Okay, here we go. Thing in the Moonlight. Morgan is not a literary man. In fact, he cannot speak English with any degree of coherency. That is what makes me wonder about the words he wrote, though others have laughed. He was alone the evening it happened. Suddenly, an unconquerable urge to write came over him, and taking pen in hand, he wrote the following. My name is Howard Phillips. I live at 66 College Street in Providence, Rhode Island. On November 24th, 1927, for I know not even what year it may be now, I fell asleep and dreamed, since when I have been unable to waken. That is a nightmare. Oh my God. The dream began in a dank, reed-choked marsh that lay under a gray autumn sky, with a rugged cliff of lichen-crusted stone rising to the north. Impelled by some obscure quest, I ascended a rift or cleft in this beetling precipice, noticing as I did the black mouths of many fearsome burrows extending from both walls into the depths of the stony plateau. At several points, the passage was roofed over by the choking of the upper parts of the narrow fissure, these places being exceeding dark and forbidding the perception of such burrows as may have existed there. In one such dark space, I felt conscious of a singular accession of fright, as if some subtle and bodiless emanation from the abyss were engulfing my spirit. Have you ever felt that? I feel like I've felt that before. But the blackness was too great for me to perceive the source of my alarm. At length I emerged upon a tableland of moss-grown rock and scanty soil, lit by a faint moonlight which had replaced the expiring orb of day. Casting my eyes about, I beheld no living object, but was sensible of a very peculiar stirring far below me. Amongst the whispering rushes of the pestilential swamp I had lately quitted. After walking for some distance, I encountered the rusty tracks of a street railway and the worm-eaten poles which still held the limp and sagging trolley wire. Following this line, I soon came upon a yellow vestibuled car, numbered 1852, of a plain, double-trucked type, common from 1900 to 1910. It was untenanted, but evidently ready to start, the trolley being on the wire and the air brake now and then throbbing beneath the floor. I boarded it and looked vainly about for the light switch. Nothing, noting as I did so the absence of the controller handle, which thus implied the brief absence of the motorman. Then I sat down in one of the cross seats of the vehicle. Presently I heard a swishing in the sparse grass toward the left, and saw the dark forms of 2 men looming up in the moonlight. They had the regulation caps of a railway company, and I could not doubt but they were conductor and motorman. Then one of them sniffed with singular sharpness, and raised his face to howl at the moon. The other dropped on all fours to run toward the car. I lapped up at once and raced madly out of the car and across endless leagues of plateau till exhaustion forced me to stop. Doing this not because the conductor had dropped on all fours, but because the face of the motorman was a mere white cone tapering to one blood-red tentacle. I was aware that I only dreamed, but the very awareness was not pleasant. Since that fearful night, I have prayed only for awakening. It has not come. Instead, I have found myself an inhabitant of this terrible dream world. That first night gave way to dawn, and I wandered aimlessly over the lonely swamplands. When night came, I still wandered, hoping for awakening. But suddenly I parted the weeds and saw before me the ancient railway car, and to one side a cone-faced thing lifted its head, and in the streaming moonlight howled strangely. It has been the same each day. Night takes me always to that place of horror. I have tried not moving with the coming of nightfall, but I must walk in my slumber, for always I awaken with a thing of dread howling before me in the pale moonlight, and I turn and flee madly. God, when will I awaken? That is what Morgan wrote. I would go to 66 College Street in Providence, but I fear for what I might find there. 1934. I'm wondering if I should read by candlelight. It's like entirely not creepy enough in this room. Oh, how's it going in chat? Okay. I'm gonna go. Oh, there is a candle here. Okay, let me see what it looks like when I'm gonna light a candle. Let's see if I can make it creepier in here. Oh, this candle's brand new. I don't want to like light up a brand new candle. I'm gonna go looking. Let's see if I can find a half-used candle. Oh, this one's still new. There's too many new candles in this house. I need like a used one. Oh, perfect. I found a used candle. Okay, this is good. Is this on a dimmer? It's not on a dimmer. Okay, gotta create some ambiance. Okay, I have some matches. Where did they go? Come on. I got some matches from a bar in Austin. I knew they would come in handy. Here it is. The bar was called Gina's, and it was delicious. Okay. I'm gonna make the room cool. Oh, there's a small lamp. Okay, this is good. I'm gonna... How do I turn this on? Here it is. Okay. Yeah, okay, this is getting better and better. Okay. We're gonna pretend like it's still the full moon because that's the mood I'm in. Is there a chair? Oh, there is a chair. Okay. Okay. This is more fun, isn't it? Okay. Okay, let's pick another story. Okay, someone asked, is that an Airbnb? No, actually I'm house sitting. This is, it's more chill than that. This place is awesome. Okay, I'm gonna find another story. I think I've already read Polaris on stream. Yeah. Oh, this story looks cool though. I might read it anyway. Okay. I think I found one called Beyond the Wall of Sleep. This is a long one. Okay. I'm gonna read Beyond the Wall of Sleep. This looks excellent. I have often wondered if the majority of mankind ever paused to reflect upon the occasionally titanic significance of dreams. I wonder about this a lot too. And of the obscure world to which they belong, whilst the greater number of our nocturnal visions are perhaps no more than faint and fantastic reflections of our waking experiences. Freud, to the contrary, with his puerile symbolism, there are still a certain remainder whose immundane and ethereal character permit of no ordinary interpretation, and whose vaguely exciting and disquieting effects suggest possible minute glimpses into a sphere of mental existence no less important than physical life, yet separated from that life by an all but impassable barrier. From my experience, I cannot doubt but that man, when lost to terrestrial consciousness, is indeed sojourning in another and uncorporeal life of far different nature from the life we know, and of which only the slightest and most indistinct memories linger after waking. From those blurred and fragmentary memories, we may infer much, yet prove little. We may guess that in dreams, life, matter, and vitality, as the earth knows such things, are not necessarily constant, and that time and space do not exist as our waking selves and comprehend them. Sometimes I believe that this less material life is our truer life, and that our vain presence on the terraqueous globe is itself the secondary or merely virtual phenomenon. It was from a youthful reverie filled with speculations of this sort that I arose one afternoon in the winter of 1900 to 1901, when the state psychopathic institution in which I served as an intern was brought the man whose case has ever since haunted me so unceasingly. His name, as given on the records, was Joe Slater, or Slater, and his appearance was that of the typical denizen of the Catskill Mountain region, one of those strange, repellent scions of a primitive colonial peasant stock whose isolation for nearly 3 centuries in the hilly fastness of a little-traveled countryside has caused them to sink to a kind of barbaric degeneracy, rather than advance with their more fortunately placed brethren of the thickly settled districts. Among these odd folk, who correspond exactly to the decadent element of white trash, in the South, law and morals are non-existent, and their general mental status is probably below that of any other section of Native American people. I apologize for any racism inherent in this writing. The countryside does sound amazing. Like, I want to go there. Like, I would love to go visit Appalachia. Like, it sounds awesome. Anyway, Joe Slater, who came to the institution in the vigilant custody of 4 state policemen and who is described as a highly dangerous character, certainly presented no evidence of his perilous disposition when I first beheld him. Though well above the middle stature and of somewhat brawny frame, he was given an absurd appearance of harmless stupidity by the pale, sleepy blueness of his small, watery eyes, the scantiness of his neglected and never-shaven growth of yellow beard, and the listless drooping of his heavy nether lip. His age was unknown, since among his kind neither family records nor permanent family ties exist, but from the baldness of his head in front and from the decayed condition of his teeth, the head surgeon wrote him down as a man of about 40. From the medical and court documents, we learned that all could be gathered of his case. This man, a vagabond, hunter, and trapper, had always been strange in the eyes of his primitive associates. He had habitually slept at night beyond the ordinary time, and upon waking would often talk of unknown things in a manner so bizarre as to inspire fear even in the hearts of an unimaginative populace. Not that his form of language was at all unusual, for he never spoke, save in the debased language save in the debased patois of his environment. But the tone and tenor of his utterances were of such mysterious wildness that none might listen without apprehension. He himself was generally as terrified and baffled as his auditors, and within an hour after awakening would forget all that he had said, or at least all that had caused him to say what he did, relapsing into a bovine, half-amiable normality like that of his other hill-dwellers. As Slater grew older, it appeared his matutinal aberrations had gradually increased in frequency and violence, till about a month before his arrival at the institution had occurred that the shocking tragedy which caused his arrest by the authorities. One day near noon, after a profound sleep begun in a whiskey debauch at about 5 of the previous afternoon, the man had roused himself most suddenly with ululations so horrible and unearthly that they brought several neighbors to his cabin, a filthy sty, where he dwelt with a family as indescribable as himself. Rushing out into the snow, he had flung his arms aloft and commenced a series of leaps directly upward into the air. While shouting his determination to reach some big cabin with brightness in the roof and walls and floor and the loud queer music far away. As two men of moderate size sought to restrain him, he had struggled with maniacal force, screaming of his desire and need to find and kill a certain thing that shines and shakes and laughs. At length, after temporarily felling one of his detainers with a sudden blow, he had flung himself upon the other in a demonic ecstasy of bloodthirstiness, shrieking fiendishly that he would jump high in the air and burn his way through anything that stopped him. Family and neighbors had now fled in a panic, and when the more courageous of them returned, Slater was gone, leaving behind an unrecognizable pulp-like thing that had been a living man but an hour before. None of the mountaineers had dared pursue him. And it is likely that they would have welcomed his death from the cold, but when several mornings later they heard his screams from a distant ravine, they realized that he had somehow managed to survive, and that his removal, in one way or another, would be necessary. Then had followed an armed searching party whose purpose, whatever it may have been originally, became that of a sheriff's posse after one of the seldom popular state troopers had by accident observed, then questioned, and finally joined the seekers. On the third day, Slater was found unconscious in the hollow of a tree and taken to the nearest jail, where alienists from Albany examined him as soon as his senses returned. To them he told a simple story. He had, he said, gone to sleep one afternoon about sundown after drinking much liquor. He had awakened to find himself standing bloody-handed in the snow before his cabin, the mangled corpse of his neighbor Peter Slater at his feet. Horrified, he had taken to the woods in a vague effort to escape from the scene of what must have been his crime. Beyond these things, he seemed to know nothing, nor could the expert questioning of his interrogators bring out a single additional fact. That night, Slater slept quietly, and the next morning he awakened with no singular features save a certain alteration of expression. Dr. Barnard, who had been watching the patient, thought he noticed in the pale blue eyes a certain gleam of peculiar quality, and in the flaccid lips in all but an imperceptible tightening, as if of intelligent determination. But when questioned, Slater relapsed into the habitual vacancy of the mountaineer, and only reiterated what he had said on the preceding day. On the third morning occurred the first of the man's mental attacks. After some show of uneasiness in sleep, he burst forth into a frenzy so powerful that the combined efforts of 4 men were needed to bind him in a straitjacket. The alienists listened with keen attention to his words, since their curiosity had been aroused to a high pitch by the suggestive, yet mostly conflicting and incoherent stories of his family and neighbors. Slater raved for upward of 15 minutes, babbling in his backwoods of dialect, of green edifices of light, oceans of space, strange music, and shadowy mountains and valleys. But most of all, did he dwell upon some mysterious blazing entity that shook and laughed and mocked at him. This vast, vague personality seemed to have done him a terrible wrong, and to kill it in triumphant revenge was his paramount desire. In order to reach it, he said, he would soar through abysses of emptiness, burning every obstacle that stood in the way. Thus ran his discourse, until with the greatest suddenness he ceased. The fire of madness died from his eyes, and in dull wonder he looked at his questioners, and asked why he was bound. Dr. Barnard unbuckled the leather harness and did not restore it till night, when he succeeded in persuading Slater to don it of his own volition for his own good. The man had now admitted that he sometimes talked queerly, though he knew not why. Within a week or two, more attacks appeared, but from them the doctors learned little. On the source of Slater's visions, they speculated at length, for since he could neither read nor write, and had apparently never heard a legend or fairy tale, his gorgeous imagery was quite inexplicable. That it could not come from any known myth or romance was made especially clear by the fact that the unfortunate lunatic expressed himself only in his own simple manner. He raved of things he did not understand and could not interpret, things which he claimed to have experienced, but which he could not have learned through any normal or connected narration. The alienists soon agreed that abnormal dreams were the foundation of the trouble. Dreams whose vividness could, for a time, completely dominate the waking mind of this basically inferior man. With due formality, Slater was tried for murder, acquitted on the ground of insanity, and committed to the institution wherein I held so humble a post. I have said that I am a constant speculator concerning dream life, and from this you may judge of the eagerness with which I applied myself to the study of the new patient as soon as I had fully ascertained the facts of his case. He seemed to sense a certain friendliness in me, born no doubt of the interest I could not conceal, and the gentle manner in which I questioned him. Not that he ever recognized me during his attacks, when I hung breathlessly on his chaotic but cosmic word pictures, but he knew me in his quiet hours, when he would sit by his barred window weaving baskets of straw and willow, and perhaps pining for the mountains, freedom he could never again enjoy. His family never called to see him, probably had found another temporary head, after the manner of decadent mountain folk. By degrees I commenced to feel an overwhelming wonder at the mad and fantastic conceptions of Joe Slater. The man himself was pitiably inferior in mentality and language alike, but his glowing, titanic visions, though described in a barbarous, disjointed jargon, were assuredly things which only a superior or even exceptional brain could conceive. How, I often asked myself, could the stolid imagination of a Catskill degenerate conjure up sights whose very possession argued a lurking spark of genius? How could any backwoods dullard have gained so much as an idea of those glittering realms of supernatural radiance and space about which Slater ranted in his furious delirium? More and more, I inclined to the belief that in the pitiful personality who cringed before me lay the disordered nucleus of something beyond my comprehension. Something infinitely beyond the comprehension of my more experienced but less imaginative medical and scientific colleagues. And yet, I could extract nothing definite from the man. The sum of all my investigation was that in a kind of semi-corporeal dream life Slater wandered or floated through resplendent and prodigious valleys, meadows, gardens, cities, and palaces of light in a region unbounded and unknown to man. That there he was, no peasant or degenerate, but a creature of importance and vivid life, moving proudly and dominantly, and checked only by a certain deadly enemy, who seemed to be a being of visible yet ethereal structure, and who did not appear to be of human shape, since Slater never referred to it as man, or as aught save a thing. This thing had done Slater some hideous but unnamed wrong, which the maniac, if maniac he were, yearned to avenge. From the manner in which Slater alluded to their dealings, I judged that he and the luminous thing had met on equal terms, that in his dream existence the man was himself a luminous thing of the same race as his enemy. This impression was sustained by his frequent references to flying through space and burning all that impeded his progress. Yet these conceptions were formulated in rustic words wholly inadequate to convey them, a circumstance which drove me to the conclusion that if a dream world indeed existed, oral language was not its medium for the transmission of thought. Could it be that the dream soul inhabiting this inferior body was desperately struggling to speak things which the simple and halting tongue of dullness could not utter? Could it be that I was face to face with intellectual emanations which would explain the mystery, if I could but learn to discover and read them? I did not tell the older physicians of these things, for middle age is skeptical, cynical, and disinclined to accept new ideas. Besides, the head of the institution had but lately warned me in his paternal way that I was overworking and that my mind needed a rest. It had long been my belief that human thought consists basically of atomic or molecular motion, convertible into ether waves, or radiant energy like heat, light, and electricity. This belief had early led me to contemplate the possibility of telepathy or mental communication by means of suitable apparatus, and I had in my college days prepared a set of transmitting and receiving instruments, somewhat similar to the cumbrous devices employed in wireless telegraphy at that crude pre-radio period. These I had tested with a fellow student, but achieving no result, had soon packed them away with other scientific odds and ends for possible future use. Sir Equinox says Eldritch Ooze. We haven't gotten there yet. Oh, what's the candle smell like? Eldritch Ooze? It smells like, maybe like vanilla orange or something. Yeah, okay. Eldritch Ooze candle. I love that. That would be an excellent candle. I used to joke that I wanted to make like gothy metal scene scented candles, and like one of the candles, it would be like black and I would dye the wax red and it would smell like mosh pit sweaty jacket. Like, okay, this is a dumb idea. I'm moving on. Okay. Okay. He packed away his scientific odds and ends to consider telepathy. Okay, now in my intense desire to probe into the dream life of Joe Slater, I sought these instruments again and spent several days in repairing them for action. When they were complete once more, I missed no opportunity for their trial. At each outburst of Slater's violence, I would fit the transmitter to his forehead and the receiver to my own, constantly making delicate adjustments for various hypothetical wavelengths of intellectual energy. I had but little notion of how the thought impressions would, if successfully conveyed, arouse an intelligent response in my brain, but I felt certain that I could detect and interpret them. Accordingly, I continued my experiments, though informing no one of their nature. It was on the 21st of February, 1901, that the thing occurred. As I look back across the years, I realize how unreal it seems, and sometimes wonder if old Dr. Fenton was not right when he charged it all to my excited imagination. I recall that he listened with great kindness and patience when I told him, but afterwards gave me a nerve powder and arranged for the half-year's vacation on which I departed the next week. That fateful night, I was wildly agitated and perturbed, for despite the excellent care he had received, Joe Slater was unmistakably dying. Perhaps it was his mountain freedom that he missed. Perhaps the turmoil in his brain had grown too acute for his rather sluggish physique. But at all events, the flame of vitality flickered low in the decadent body. He was drowsy near the end. And as darkness fell, he dropped off into a troubled sleep. I did not strap on the straitjacket, as was customary when he slept, since I saw that he was too feeble to be dangerous, even if he woke in mental disorder once more before passing away. But I did place upon his head and mine the two ends of my cosmic radio, hoping against hope for a first and last message from the dream world in the brief time remaining. In the cell with us was one nurse, a mediocre fellow who did not understand the purpose of the apparatus, or think to inquire into my course. As the hours wore on, I saw his head droop awkwardly in sleep. But I did not disturb him. I myself, lulled by the rhythmical breathing of the healthy and dying man, must have nodded a little later. The sound of the weird lyric melody was what aroused me. Chords, vibrations, and harmonic ecstasies echoed passionately on every hand, while on my ravished sight burst the stupendous spectacle of ultimate beauty. Walls, columns, and architraves of living fire blazed effulgently around the spot where I seemed to float in the air, extending upward to an infinitely high vaulted dome of indescribable splendor. Blending with this display of palatial magnificence, or rather supplanting it at times in kaleidoscopic rotation, were glimpses of wide plains and graceful valleys, high mountains and inviting grottos, covered with every lovely attribute of scenery which my delighted eyes could conceive of, yet formed wholly of some glowing ethereal plastic entity, which in consistency partook as much of spirit as of matter. As I gazed, I perceived that my own brain held the key to these enchanting metamorphoses. For each vista which appeared to me was the one my changing mind most wished to behold. Amidst this Elysian realm, I dwelt not as a stranger, for each sight and sound was familiar to me, just as it had been for uncounted eons of eternity before, and would be for like eternities to come. Then the resplendent aura of my brother of light drew near, and held colloquy with me, soul to soul, with silent and perfect interchange of thought. The hour was one of approaching triumph, for was not my fellow being escaping at last from a degrading periodic bondage, escaping forever, and preparing to follow the accursed oppressor, even unto the uttermost fields of ether, that upon it might be wrought a flaming cosmic vengeance, which would shake the spheres? We floated thus for a little time, when I perceived a slight blurring and fading of the objects around us, and as though some force were recalling me to earth, where I least wished to go. The form near me seemed to feel a change also, for it gradually brought its discourse toward a conclusion, and itself prepared to quit the scene, fading from my sight at a rate somewhat less rapid than that of the other objects. A few more thoughts were exchanged, and I knew that the luminous one and I were being recalled to bondage, though for my brother of light it would be the last time. The sorry planet shell being well nigh spent, in less than an hour my fellow would be free to pursue the oppressor along the Milky Way and past the hither stars to the very confines of infinity. A well-defined shock separates my final impression of the fading scene of light from my sudden and somewhat shamefaced awakening, and straightening up in my chair as I saw the dying figure on the couch move hesitantly. Joe Slater was indeed awakening, though probably for the last time. As I looked more closely, I saw that in the sallow cheeks shone spots of color which had never before been present. The lips, too, seemed unusual, being tightly compressed, as if by force of a stronger character than had been Slater's. The whole face finally began to grow tense. The head turned restlessly with closed eyes. I did not rouse the sleeping nurse, but readjusted the slightly disarranged headband of my telepathic radio, intent to catch any parting message the dreamer might have to deliver. All at once, the head turned sharply in my direction, and the eyes fell open, causing me to stare in blank amazement at what I beheld. The man who had been Joe Slater, the Catskill decadent, was gazing at me with a pair of luminous, expanding eyes whose blue seemed subtly to have deepened. Neither mania nor degeneracy was visible in that gaze, and I felt beyond a doubt that I was viewing a face beyond which lay an active mind of high order. At this juncture, my brain became aware of a steady external influence operating upon it. I closed my eyes to concentrate my thoughts more profoundly, and was rewarded by the positive knowledge that my long-sought mental message had come at last. Each transmitted idea formed rapidly in my mind, and though no actual language was employed, My habitual association of conception and expression was so great that I seemed to be receiving the message in ordinary English. Joe Slater is dead, came the soul petrifying voice of an agency from beyond the wall of sleep. My opened eyes sought the couch of pain in curious horror, but the blue eyes were still calmly gazing, and the countenance was still intelligently animated. He is better dead, for he was unfit to bear the active intellect of cosmic entity. His gross body could not undergo the needed adjustments between ethereal life and planet life. He was too much an animal, too little a man. Yet it is through his deficiency that you have come to discover me, for the cosmic and planet souls rightly should never meet. He has been in my torment and diurnal prison for 42 of your terrestrial years. My torment and diurnal prison for 42 of your terrestrial years. I am an entity like that which you yourself become in the freedom of dreamless sleep. I am your brother of light, and have floated with you in effulgent valleys. It is not permitted me to tell your waking earth self of your real self, but we are all roamers of vast spaces and travelers in many ages. Next year I may be dwelling in the Egypt which you call ancient, or in the cruel empire of the Zanshan, which is to come 3,000 years hence. You and I have drifted to the worlds that reel about the red Arcturus, and dwelt in the bodies of the insect philosophers that crawl proudly over the fourth moon of Jupiter. How little does the earth self know life and its extent? How little, indeed, ought it to know for its own tranquility? Of the oppressor, I cannot speak. You on earth have unwittingly felt its distant presence. You who without knowing idly give the blinking beacon the name Algol, the demon star. It is to meet and conquer the oppressor I have vainly striven for eons, held back by bodily encumbrances. Tonight I go as a nemesis bearing just and blazingly cataclysmic vengeance. Watch me in the sky, close by the demon star. I cannot speak longer, for the body of Joe Slater grows cold and rigid, and the coarse brains are ceasing to vibrate as I wish. You have been my only friend on this planet, the only soul to sense and seek for me within the repellent form which lies on this couch. We shall meet again, perhaps in the shining mists of Orion's sword, perhaps on a bleak plateau in prehistoric Asia, perhaps in unremembered dreams tonight, perhaps in some other form, an eon hence, when the solar system shall have been swept away. At this point, the thought waves abruptly ceased. The pale eyes of the dreamer, or can I say dead man, commenced to glaze fishily. In a half stupor, I crossed over the couch and felt his wrist, but found it cold, stiff, and pulseless. The sallow cheeks paled again, and the thick lips fell open, disclosing the repulsively rotten fangs of the degenerate Joe Slater. I shivered, pulled a blanket over the hideous face, and awakened the nurse. Then I left the cell and went silently to my room. I had an instant and unaccountable craving for a sleep whose dreams I could not remember. The climax? What plain tale of science can boast such a rhetorical effect? I have merely set down certain things appealing to me as facts, allowing you to construe them as you will. As I have already admitted, my superior, old Dr. Fenton, denies the reality of everything I have related. He vows that I was broken down with nervous strain and badly in need of a long vacation on full pay, which he so generously gave me. He assures me on his professional honor that Joe Slater was but a low-grade paranoiac, whose fantastic notions must have come from the crude hereditary folk tales which circulated in even the most decadent of communities. All this he tells me, yet I cannot forget what I saw in the sky on the night after Slater died. Lest you think me a biased witness, another pen must add this final testimony, which may perhaps supply the climax you expect. I will quote the following account of the star Nova Persei verbatim from the pages of that eminent astronomical authority, Professor Garrett P. Serviss. On February 22nd, 1901, a marvelous new star was discovered by Dr. Anderson of Edinburgh, not very far from Algol. No star had been visible at that point before. Within 24 hours, the stranger had become so bright that it outshone Capella. In a week or two, it had visibly faded, and in the course of a few months, it was hardly discernible with the naked eye. Oh, that was a good story. Oh my gosh. I'm going to take a minute before starting a new one. What did you think of that one? What do you think about the entity from beyond making him insane? I love that. And his description of like the Elysian dreamscape, I've had dreams like that, where it's like ancient pillars across like lush green rolling hills. I've never read that story before, but I've had images like that in dreams. It's pretty cool. I wonder if it's like just like themes that emerge in lots of people's dreams, and that's how it ended up coming to this story. Slater wouldn't have died if he had had some waffles. I agree, man. Oris, do you have this same book? Do you have a favorite story out of here that I should read? I'm gonna take a minute, but I'm gonna choose another story probably, because we've only been here an hour and I'm having so much fun. I should get a cup of tea or something. Should I go make a tea? I'm gonna see if there's hot chocolate here. And then I'll read another story. Let me see what else is in here. Okay. I like this collection. I love dreams. Have you ever lucid dreamed in your life? I used to do it when I was a teenager. It was pretty cool. There's one called The Hound. There's The Cats of Ulthar. That sounds great. The Strange High House in the Mist. I feel like I've read that one. The Dreams in the Witch House. Okay. Oh, that one's 25 pages long. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna have to get a warm, cozy drink. And then we'll pick another story. Cats of Ulthar? Okay, I'll read that one. My gut was telling me to read that one. Okay, let's make some tea. Let's make some tea, read more stories. This is so much fun. I love it when you guys come hang out. Okay. Time to make some tea. Gonna read Cats of Ulthar. Woo-hoo. Alright. Okay. What kind of tea do we have? I wish we had hot chocolate. Maybe I will look for hot chocolate. It is the best because it has cats. I agree. I love that logic. Oh man. What I would give for hot chocolate right now. Okay, let's see if I can find it. There's ginger chamomile. Ooh, there's beautiful green teas. This open? That's not open. I don't want to open it. There's jasmine. There's ginger chamomile. Oh, there's honey lavender. Okay. Lavender. Honey lavender sounds so beautiful. Okay. Doesn't that sound so nice? Honey lavender stress relief. Okay. Oh man, I can't just leave you guys. It's boring over there. You know what's good with tea? Waffles. I do wish I had waffles. But I ate a big dinner. And I'm not really jonesing for waffles right now, honestly. But what I am jonesing for... Oh God, look at this. There's chocolate. Oranges. Oh man. I gotta. We're We're gonna have a little mukbang ASMR on our way. Read more stories. Oh, chocolate is so good. Seriously, my favorite thing ever. There's always room for waffles. You know what? I had a waffle the other day. I did. I'm not really jonesing for a waffle. Wilbur Watley was wild about waffles. Did you guys ever listen to Loveline? Do you remember the concept of waffle crapper? Because that will always be with me. If you don't know what a waffle crapper is, go look it up on YouTube right now. Look up Loveline waffle crapper. And don't blame me when you find out what it is. Chocolate is like so soothing to the soul. I swear to God. Pizza? Oh, pizza sounds good. It really does. God, I just want more chocolate. Why am I so obsessed with chocolate? This mug is really hot. Okay. I don't like this light. Light too bright. There's too much lens flare. Normally I like some tasteful lens flare. It's like a little too much for me right now. Okay, we're gonna have this honey lavender stress relief tea. This mug is really hot. Oh man. There's nothing I love more than lavender tea. Oh yeah. Yeah, it smells like soap. Give me that lavender tea. It's very relaxing though. I'm into it. My phone camera, yeah. I think it's the light. It's dirty. And because I have astigmatism, I'm terrible at cleaning my camera because that's what my eyeballs look like all the time. My eyeballs look like crazy amounts of lens flare. Oh god, that smells good. Oh man. Okay. Okay, look at this color. I'm gonna flip it around. It's actually got a beautiful golden color. I love this. I'm so happy. Okay. Dude, it's been a good day. It really has. Okay, I'm gonna get some regular water. Oh, how am I gonna carry all this stuff? And then we're gonna read The Cats of Ulthar. Okay. How am I gonna get all of this stuff? Okay, I can do this. I can do it. Yes. Okay. Here we go. I can't see exactly like what is being said, but it makes me kind of uncomfortable. Okay. Angle this. Okay, there's our cool candle. Now that we've got our vibe. Okay, nobody listened to Ulysses. I feel like in general, his interests are so like out of left field that every time he says something, I'm a little bit slightly horrified. But that's okay, because I admire that in a person. Comrade Internet looks at chat, sobs. I agree. I'm not here to judge, but I'm just saying I laugh so that I don't cry. Okay. The Cats of Ulthar. Let's find what page this is on. The best story, because it has cats in it. Page 36. Ah, here we are. The Cats of Ulthar. Also, made-up words are the most fun ones. Okay. It's said that in Ulthar, which lies beyond the river and sky, no man may kill a cat. And this I can verily believe, as I gaze upon him, who sitteth purring before the fire. For the cat is cryptic, and close to strange things which men cannot see. He is the soul of antique Egyptus, and bearer of tales from forgotten cities in Meroe and Ophir. He is the kin of the jungle's lords, and heir to the secrets of hoary and sinister Africa. The Sphinx is his cousin, and he speaks her language, but he is more ancient than the Sphinx, and remembers that which she hath forgotten. In Ulthar, before ever the burgesses forbade the killing of cats, there dwelt an old cotter and his wife, who delighted to trap and slay the cats of their neighbors. Why they did this, I know not, save that many hate the voice of the cat in the night. Relatable. And take it ill that cats should run stealthily about yards and gardens at twilight. But whatever the reason, this old man and woman took pleasure in trapping and slaying every cat which came near to their hovel, and from some of the sounds heard after dark, many villagers fancied that the manner of slaying was exceedingly peculiar. But the villagers did not discuss such things with the old man and his wife, because of the habitual expression on the withered faces of the two, and because their cottage was so small and so darkly hidden under spreading oaks at the back of a neglected yard. In truth, much as the owners of cats hated these odd folk, they feared them more, and instead of berating them as brutal assassins, merely took care that no cherished pet or mouser should stray toward the remote hovel under the dark trees. When, though, some unavoidable oversight, a cat was missed, and sounds heard after dark, the loser would lament impotently, or console himself by thanking fate that it was not one of his children who had thus vanished. For the people of Ulthar were simple, and knew not whence it is all cats first came. One day, a caravan of strange wanderers from the south entered the narrow cobbled streets of Ulthar. Dark wanderers they were, and unlike the other roving folk who passed through the village twice every year. In the marketplace, they told fortunes for silver and bought gay beads from the merchants. What was the land of these wanderers, none could tell, but it was seen that they were given to strange prayers, and that they had painted on the sides of their wagons strange figures with human bodies and the heads of cats, hawks, rams, and lions. And the leader of the caravan wore a headdress with 2 horns and a curious disc betwixt the horns. There was in this singular caravan a little boy with no father or mother, but only a tiny black kitten to cherish. The plague had not been kind to him, yet had left him this small furry thing to mitigate his sorrow. Relatable. Okay, sorry. But had left him this small furry thing to mitigate his sorrow, and when one is very young, one can find great relief in the lively antics of a black kitten. So the boy whom the dark people called Menace smiled more often than he wept as he sat playing with his graceful kitten on the steps of an oddly painted wagon. Oh, Beth Rosen is here. Hi, Beth Rosen. On the third morning of the wanderer's stay in Ulthar, Menes could not find his kitten, and as he sobbed aloud in the marketplace, certain villagers told him of the old man and his wife, and of sounds heard in the night. And when he heard these things, his sobbing gave place to meditation, and finally to prayer. He stretched out his arms toward the sun and prayed in a tongue no villager could understand. Though indeed the villagers did not try very hard to understand, since their attention was mostly taken up by the sky and the odd shapes and clouds were assuming. It was very peculiar, but as the little boy uttered his petition, there seemed to form overhead the shadowy nebulous figures of exotic things. Of hybrid creatures crowned with horn-flanked discs. Nature is full of such illusions to impress the imaginative. That night the wanderers left Ulthar, and they were never seen again. And the householders were troubled when they noticed that in all the village there was not a cat to be found. From each hearth, the familiar cat had vanished, cats large and small, black, gray, striped, yellow, and white. Old Crannon, the burgomaster, swore that the dark folk had taken the cats away in revenge for the killing of Mene's kitten, and cursed the caravan and the little boy. But Nith, the lean notary, declared that the old cotter and his wife were more likely persons to suspect, for their hatred of cats was notorious and increasingly bold. Still, no one durst complain to the sinister couple, even when little Atal, the innkeeper's son, vowed that he had at twilight seen all the cats of Ulthar in that accursed yard under the trees, pacing very slowly and solemnly in a circle around the cottage. Oh, that's wild. Two abreast, as if in performance of some unheard of rite of beasts. The villagers did not know how much to believe from so small a boy, and though they feared that the evil pair had charmed the cats to their death, they preferred not to chide the old cotter till they met him outside his dark and repellent yard. So Ulthar went to sleep in vain anger, and when the people awakened at dawn, behold, every cat was back at his accustomed hearth. Large and small, black and gray, striped yellow and white, none was missing. Very sleek and fat did the cats appear, and sonorous with purring content. The citizens talked with one another of the affair, and marveled not a little. Old Crannon again insisted that it was the dark folk who had taken them, since cats did not return alive from the cottage of the ancient man and his wife. But all agreed on one thing, that the refusal of all the cats to eat their portions of meat or drink their saucers of milk was exceedingly curious. And for 2 whole days the sleek, lazy cats of Ulthar would touch no food, but only doze by the fire or in the sun. It was fully a week before the villagers noticed that no lights were appearing at dusk in the windows of the cottage under the trees. Then the lean Nith remarked that no one had seen the old man or his wife since the night the cats were away. In another week, the burgomaster decided to overcome his fears and call at the strangely silent dwelling as a matter of duty, though in so doing he was careful to take with him Shang, the blacksmith, and Thul, the cutter of stone, as witnesses. And when they had broken down the frail door, they found only this: 2 cleanly picked human skeletons on the earthen floor, and a number of singular beetles crawling in the shadowy corners. There was subsequently much talk amongst the burgesses of Ulthar. Zath, the coroner, disputed at length with Neith. The lean notary, and Crannon and Shang and Thul were overwhelmed with questions. Even little Atal, the innkeeper's son, was closely questioned and given a sweetmeat as a reward. They talked of the old cotter and his wife, of the caravan of dark wanderers, of small Menes and his black kitten, of the prayer of Menes and the sky during that prayer, of the doings of the cats on the night of the caravan left, and of what was later found in the cottage under the dark trees in the repellent yard. And in the end, the burgesses passed that remarkable law, which is told by the traders of Hatheg and discussed by the travelers in Nir, namely that in Ulthar, no man may kill a cat. Ooh, okay, so many things came to mind. It kind of reminds me of Full Metal Alchemist, like, did the cats do some arcane ritual sacrificing the cotter and his wife to reanimate all the dead cats? Like, did the Cotter and his wife serve as some kind of bodily sacrifice to bring back all the cats they murdered? I don't know. Okay, the other thing. Okay, this is a crazy story. Um, so when I lived in Hawaii, I had a boss and she was a cat lady, but not like a cat lady like not like your usual. Like I'm a cat lady. I love cats. I used to treat my cat when I had a cat like like my baby basically. He was my child. But but I had one cat. Now, my boss, she had 8 cat. No, it was either 8 or 16, I can't remember. It was probably 8. She had 8 cats at her house, like because there were so many stray cats in Hawaii, and every time a cat adopted her, she kept it. And she would feed all of them. And like if some of them couldn't be around each other, she kept them in different rooms, and like there were so many cats. Anyway, so one time we were driving past a school. She was taking me there to go introduce me to the administrators, and this school had like a couple acres of land that were surrounded by these wooden pillars. And she was telling me as she was driving by, like one time she drove at midnight past this school, and on every pillar for like a mile was a cat. And like, what kind of arcane ritual were these cats doing just like lined up on the pillars at midnight? Like, what is going on? So, that is my crazy cat arcane ritual story that like I don't know what the cats were up to, but they were up to something. Okay. What's the next story I should read? I'm gonna see how my tea is doing. Probably still too hot. Ah. Oh man, if HP Lovecraft lived modern day and absorbed cat memes, he might not have been so insane and like paranoid. We may never have had his works. Tea. This tea is delicious. Mm. Cellophane. Yeah, I think I do. How do you pronounce that? Cellophane? Cellophane? Pardon my ignorance. Okay. I think I've read that story before on live stream, but I'll do it again if it's being requested. Yes. That's the next story, actually. Good call. Okay. Okay. Should I do it? I guess I will. Yeah. And right after that one is From Beyond. Oh, man. Okay, I'm not going to read that story yet. I'll read Cellophane. In a dream, Kurane saw the city in the valley. Oh, Ryan, thank you for joining us. I'm so sorry one of your favorite Lovecraft narrators passed away. Who was it? Like, did they have a good channel? Like, I want to check them out. We're about to read the short story. Wayne June. Okay, I'm gonna check out that person. Thank you for joining. I'm so sorry to hear of your loss. I hope I do them justice. I'm not as educated in the HP Lovecraft narration like culture, but I do enjoy reading his stories on occasion on live stream, so I hope I entertain you. Okay. Cellophane. In a dream, Coronis saw the city in the valley and the sea coast beyond, and the snowy peak overlooking the sea, and the gaily painted galleys that sail out of the harbor toward distant regions where the sea meets the sky. In a dream, it was also that he came by his name of Coronis, for when awake, he was called by another name. Perhaps it was natural for him to dream of a new name, for he was the last of his family, and alone among the indifferent millions of London. So there were not many to speak to him and to remind him who he had been. His money and lands were gone, and he did not care for the ways of the people about him, but he preferred to dream and write his dreams. What he wrote was laughed at by those to whom he showed it, so that after a time he kept his writings to himself, and finally ceased to write. The more he withdrew from the world about him, the more wonderful became his dreams, and it would have been quite futile to try to describe them on paper. Coronis was not modern, and did not think like others who wrote. Whilst they strove to strip from life its embroidered robes of myth and to show in naked ugliness the foul thing that is reality, Coronis sought for beauty alone. When truth and experience failed to reveal it, he sought it in fancy and illusion, and found it on his very doorstep, amid the nebulous memories of childhood tales and dreams. There are not many persons who know what wonders are open to them in the stories and visions of their youth. For when as children we listen and dream, we think but half-formed thoughts. And when as men we try to remember, we are dulled and prosaic with the poison of life. But some of us awake in the night with strange phantasms of enchanted hills and gardens, of fountains that sing in the sun, of golden cliffs overhanging murmuring seas, of plains that stretch down to sleeping cities, of bronze and stone, and of shadowy companies, of heroes that ride caparisoned with white horses along the edges of thick forests. And then we know what we have looked back through the ivory gates into that world of wonder which was ours before we were wise and unhappy. Coronis came very suddenly upon his old world of childhood. He had been dreaming of the house where he had been born, the great stone house covered with ivy, where 13 generations of his ancestors had lived, and where he had hoped to die. It was moonlight, and he had stolen out into the fragrant summer of night, through the gardens, down the terraces, past the great oaks of the park, and along the long white road to the village. The village seemed very old, eaten away at the edge like the moon which had commenced to wane, and Coronis wondered whether the peaked roof of the small houses hid sleep or death. In the streets were spears of long grass, and the window panes on either side broken or filmily staring. Coronis had not lingered, but had plodded on, as though summoned towards some goal. He dared not disobey the summons for fear it might prove an illusion like the urges and aspirations of waking life, which do not lead to any goal. Then he had been drawn down a lane that led off from the village street toward the Channel Cliffs, and had come to the end of things, to the precipice and the abyss, where all the village and all the world fell abruptly into the unechoing emptiness of infinity, and where even the sky ahead was empty and unlit by the crumbling moon and the peering stars. Faith had urged him on, over the precipice and into the gulf, where he had floated down, down, past dark, shapeless, and undreamed dreams, faintly glowing spheres that may have been partly dreamed dreams, and laughing winged things that seemed to mock the dreamers of all the worlds. Then a rift seemed to open in the darkness before him, and he saw the city of the valley, glistening radiantly far, far below, with a background of sea and sky, and a snow-capped mountain near the shore. Coronis had awakened the very moment he beheld the city, yet he knew from his brief glance that it was none other than Celophaeus, in the valley of Uthnagai, beyond the Tenarian hills, where his spirit had dwelt all the eternity of an hour one summer afternoon very long ago, when he had slipped away from his nurse and let the warm sea breeze lull him to sleep as he watched the clouds from the cliff near the village. He had protested then. When they had found him, waked him, and carried him home, for just as he was aroused, he had been about to sail in a golden galley for those alluring regions where the sea meets the sky. And now he was equally resentful of awaking, for he had found his fabulous city after 40 weary years. But 3 nights afterward, Coronis came again to Celophaeus. As before, he dreamed first of the village that was asleep or dead, and of the abyss down which one must float silently. Then the rift appeared, and he beheld the glittering minarets of the city, and saw the graceful galleys riding at anchor in the blue harbor, and watched the ginkgo trees swaying in the sea breeze. But this time he was not snatched away. and like a winged being settled gradually over a grassy hillside, till finally his feet rested gently on the turf. He had indeed come back to the valley of Uthnagai and the splendid city of Celephaeus. Down the hill and amid scented grasses and brilliant flowers walked Coronis, over the bulbing Naraxa, on the small wooden bridge where he had carved his name so many years ago, and through the whispering grove to the great stone bridge by the city gate. All was as of old, nor were the marble walls discolored, nor the polished bronze statues upon them tarnished. And Coronis saw that he need not tremble lest the things he knew be vanished, for even the sentries on the ramparts were the same, and still as young as he remembered them. When he entered the city past the bronze gates and over the onyx pavements, the merchants and camel drivers greeted him as if he had never been away. And it was the same at the turquoise temple of Nath Horthath, where the orchid-wreathed priests told him that there is no time in Uthnagai, but only perpetual youth. And then Coronis walked the street of pillars to the seaward wall, where gathered the traders and sailors, and strange men from the regions where the sea meets the sky. There he stayed long, gazing out over the bright harbor where the ripples sparked beneath an unknown sun, and where rode lightly the galleys from far places over the water. And he gazed also upon Mount Aran, rising regally from the shore, its lower slopes green with swaying trees, and its white summit touching the sky. More than ever, Coronis wished to sail in a galley to the far places of which he had heard so many strange tales, and he sought again the captain who had agreed to carry him so long ago. He found the man, Athib, sitting on the same chest of spice he had sat upon before, and Athib seemed not to realize that any time had passed. Then the two rowed to a galley in the harbor, and giving orders to the oarmen, commenced to sail out into the billowy Serenarian sea that leads to the sky. For several days they glided undulatingly over the water, till finally they came to the horizon, where the sea meets the sky. Here the galley paused not at all, but floated easily in the blue of the sky amongst fleecy clouds tinted with rose. And far beneath the keel, Coronis could see the strange lands and rivers and cities of surpassing beauty spread indolently in the sunshine, which seemed never to lessen or disappear. At length, Athib told him that their journey was near its end, and that they would soon enter the harbor of Seranian, the pink marble city of the clouds, which is built on that ethereal coast where the west wind flows into the sky. But as the highest of the city's carven towers came into sight, there was a sound somewhere in space. And Coronis awaked in his London garret. For many months after Coronis sought the marvelous city of Celephaeus and its skybound galleys in vain, and though his dreams carried him to many gorgeous and unheard-of places, no one whom he met could tell him how to find Uth-Nargai beyond the Tenarian hills. One night he went flying over dark mountains, where there were faint, lone campfires, at great distances apart, and strange, shaggy herds with tinkling bells on the leaders, and in the wildest part of its hilly country, so remote that few men could ever have seen it. He found a hideously ancient wall, or causeway, of stone zigzagging along the ridges and valleys, too gigantic to ever have risen by human hands, and of such a length that neither end of it could be seen. Beyond that wall, in the gray dawn, he came to a land of quaint gardens and cherry trees. And when the sun rose, he beheld such beauty of red and white flowers, green foliage, and lawns, white paths, diamond brooks, blue lakelets, carven bridges, and red-roofed pagodas, that he for a moment forgot Celephaeus in sheer delight. But he remembered it again when he walked down a white path toward a red-roofed pagoda, and would have questioned the people of this land about it, had he not found that there were no people there, but only birds and bees and butterflies. On another night, Coronis walked up a damp stone spiral stairway endlessly, and came to a tower window overlooking a mighty plain and river lit by the full moon. And in the silent city that spread away from the riverbank, he thought he beheld some feature or arrangement which he had known before. He would have descended and asked the way to Uth-Nargai, had not a fearsome aurora sputtered up from some remote place beyond the horizon, showing the ruin and antiquity of the city, and the stagnation of the reedy river, and the death lying upon that land, as it had lain since King Kianarathalis came home from his conquest to find the vengeance of the gods. So Coronis thought fruitlessly for the marvelous city of Celephaeus and its galleys that sailed to Seranian in the sky, meanwhile seeing many wonders, and once barely escaping from the high priest, not to be described, which wears a yellow silken mask over its face, and dwells all alone in a prehistoric stone monastery in the cold desert plateau of Ling. In time, he grew so impatient of the bleak intervals of day that he began buying drugs in order to increase his periods of sleep. Hashish helped a great deal, and once sent him to a part of space where form does not exist, but where glowing glasses study the secrets of existence. And a violet-colored glass told him that this part of space was outside what he had called infinity. This gas had not heard of planets and organisms before, but identified Coronis merely as one from the infinity where matter, energy, and gravitation exist. Coronis was now very anxious to return to minaret-studded Celephaeus and increased his doses of drugs, but eventually he had no more money left and could buy no drugs. Then one summer day, he was turned out of his garret and wandered aimlessly through the streets, drifting over a bridge to a place where the houses grew thinner and thinner. And it was there that fulfillment came, and he met the cortege of knights come from Celephaeus to bear him thither forever. Handsome knights they were, astrode roan horses and clad in shining armor with tabards of cloth of gold curiously emblazoned. So numerous were they that Coronis almost mistook them for an army, but they were sent in his honor, since it was he who had created Uthnargai in his dreams, on which account he was now to be appointed its chief god forevermore. Then they gave Coronis a horse and placed him at the head of his cavalcade, and all rode majestically through the downs of Surrey and onward toward the region where Coronis and his ancestors were born. It was very strange, but as the riders went on, they seemed to gallop back through time, for whenever they passed through a village in the twilight, they saw only such houses and villagers as Chaucer or men before him might have seen, and sometimes they saw knights on horseback with small companies of retainers. When it grew dark, they traveled more swiftly, till soon they were flying uncannily as if in the air. In the dim dawn, they came upon the village which Coronis had seen alive in his childhood, and asleep or dead in his dreams. It was alive now. And early villagers curtsied as the horsemen clattered down the street and turned off into the lane that ends in the abyss of dreams. Coronis had previously entered that abyss only at night and wondered what it would look like by day. So he watched anxiously as the column approached its brink. Just as they galloped up the rising ground to the precipice, a golden glare came somewhere out of the west and hid all the landscape in effulgent draperies. The abyss was a seething chaos of roseate and cerulean splendor, and invisible voices sang exultantly as the knightly entourage plunged over the edge and floated gracefully down past glittering clouds and silvery edge and silvery coruscations. Endlessly down the horsemen floated, their chargers pawing at the ether as if galloping over golden sands. And then the luminous vapors spread apart to reveal a greater brightness. The brightness of the city of Celephaeus. And in the sea coast beyond, the snowy peak overlooking the sea, and the gaily painted galleys, the sail out of the harbor toward the distant regions where the sea meets the sky. And Coronis reigned thereafter over Uthnargai and all the neighboring regions of Dream, and held his court alternately in Celephaeus and in the cloud-fashioned Seranian. He reigns there still, and will reign happily forever, though below the cliffs at Innsmouth, the channel tides played mockingly with the body of a tramp who had stumbled through the half-deserted village at dawn, played mockingly and cast it upon the rocks by ivy-covered Trevor Towers, where a notably fat and especially offensive millionaire brewer enjoys the purchased atmosphere of extinct nobility. Okay, I'm gonna take a beverage break. That was excellent. Thank you for that request. Oh, I love the Innsmouth reference. It's like one of my favorite stories. I just love the insanity of Innsmouth of like, first the guy is scared and then he becomes one of them. And he's like horrified that he's actually one of the fish people. It's such a good story. Okay. It's time for a beverage break. That was the first story I heard by Wayne June. I think the Innsmouth story was the story that actually convinced me to read more HP Lovecraft. Because a friend of mine made a joke about the people from his town being like Innsmouth, like they're the fish people. And so I read that story and then I started reading more stories. Oh, this is good tea. I'm into it. Oh, the Dunwich Horror. I'm gonna see if that one's in here. I don't think that one is in here. I can always look that one up online. I feel like, because this is going well. Yeah, Call of Cthulhu is a classic. But I always just had whatever was like available to me. So books that people loaned me or whatever I could get at the library. And so sometimes I didn't get access to the ones that were the most well-known. Oh, The Whisper in Darkness. Let's see if that one's here. That one's not in here either. It's okay. I can always look them up online, but it's more fun to read out of a book. It's like, I feel like it's spookier to hold a paper book. Thank you for joining me. This has been so much fun. I might do this again tomorrow. What time do you guys want to join? I think I'm in Central Time. I could do probably 7 p.m., I think. You can find more of Wayne June's narratives on YouTube. Okay. I can definitely check him out. I feel like it'll give me some ideas. I feel like how to interpret a story better. What's up with this lamp? I'm not a huge fan. Maybe I can like... There you go. If I look a little off to the side, the glare won't happen. I'm glad you joined, even though your favorite narrator is out of commission. Does that book have the statement of Randolph Carter? Let me look. There's a bunch of different people who contributed statements. The introduction is actually... Okay, hold on, let me make sure. Okay, the introduction is by Neil Gaiman, and I know that like politically, like it's not politically correct to like enjoy Neil Gaiman right now, but that's okay. There's Walter Koenig from Star Trek contributed a statement also. And there's actually comments on the statement from Randolph Carter. There's a section here that says, Carter, for the love of God, put back the slab and get out of this if you can. Quick, leave everything else and make for the outside. It's your only chance. Do as I say and don't ask me to explain. I heard, yet was only able to repeat my frantic questions. Around me were the tombs and the darkness and the shadows. Below me, some peril beyond the radius of the human imagination. I feel like I've read this at some point. It's always hard for me to remember stuff I've read. That's it? Yeah. Okay. I could look that up also. I could look up any of these. So like, If there's requests, I can always look up stuff to read. It might be a little awkward, like reading a laptop around a candle. Like the vibes will not be the same, but I'm always happy to like read anything that you guys want me to. So happy to take requests. Unless it's making waffles. I'm probably not going to make waffles. Oh, man. I'm spacing out a little bit. Oh, I could read more. Let's see. Yeah, I will totally check out Wayne June when I'm not on live stream. But for today, hanging out and reading. Let's see what's next. One time on live stream, someone requested that I read from Beyond, and that was awesome. Like, I went to bed freaked out after I read that story. No. I don't think that was the one. I think it's like a Whisper from the Darkness was... Okay, I'm going to read this one because it's actually not that long. Okay. Does it have the hunter in the dark? Let me look. It does not have hunter in the dark. I'm going to read you the stories in this collection. Okay, it has Azathoth, The Descendant, The Thing in the Moonlight, Polaris, Beyond the Wall of Sleep, The Doom That Came to Sarnoth, The Statement of Oh, it does have the Statement of Randolph Carter. Okay, I'm going to read that one. The Cats of Ulthar, Celiphaeus, From Beyond, Nyarlathotep, The Nameless City, The Other Gods, Ex Oblivion, The Quest of Eranon, The Hound, Hypnos, What the Moon Brings, Pickman's Model, The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, The Silver Key, The Strange High House in the Mist, The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, The Dreams in the Witch House, Through the Gates of the Silver Key. Okay, I'm going to read The Statement of Randolph Carter, page 30. Okay, The Statement of Randolph Carter. Okay, what are the requests? The Doom That Came to Sarnoth and the Dream Quest of the Unknown Kadath. Okay, I will keep those in mind either next or tomorrow. Okay, The Statement of Randolph Carter. I repeat to you, gentlemen, that your inquisition is fruitless. Detain me here forever, if you will. Confine or execute me if you must have a victim to propitiate the illusion you call justice. But I can say no more than I have said already. Everything that I can remember, I have told you with perfect candor. Nothing has been distorted or concealed, and if anything remains vague, it is only because of the dark cloud which has come over my mind. That cloud and the nebulous nature of the horrors which brought it upon me. Again, I say, I do not know what has become of Harley Warren, though I think, almost hope, that he is in peaceful oblivion, if there be anywhere so blessed a thing. It is true that I have for 5 years been his closest friend, and a partial sharer of his terrible researches into the unknown. I will not deny, though my memory is uncertain and indistinct, that this witness of yours may have been us together, as he says, on the Gainesville Pike, walking toward Big Cypress Swamp, at 11:30 on that awful night, that we bore electric lanterns, spades, and a curious coil of wire with attached instruments. I will even affirm, for these things all played a part in the single hideous scene which remains burned into my shaken recollection. But of what followed, and of the reason I was found alone and dazed on the edge of the swamp next morning, I must insist that I know nothing save what I have told you over and over again. You say to me that there is nothing in the swamp or near it which could form the setting of that frightful episode. I reply that I knew nothing beyond what I saw. Vision or nightmare it may have been. Vision or nightmare I fervently hope it was. Yet it is all my mind retains of what took place in those shocking hours after we left the sight of men, and why Harley Warren did not return. He or his shade, or some nameless thing I cannot describe, alone can tell. As I have said before, the weird studies of Harley Warren were well known to me, and to some extent shared by me. Of his vast collection of strange rare books on forbidden subjects, I have read all that are written in the language of which I am master, but there are few as compared with those in languages I cannot understand. Most, I believe, are in Arabic, and the fiend-inspired book which brought on the end, the book which he carried in his pocket out of the world, was written in characters whose like I never saw elsewhere. Warren would never tell me just what was in that book. As to the nature of our studies, must I say again that I no longer retain full comprehension? It seems to me rather merciful that I do not, for they were terrible studies, which I pursued more through reluctant fascination than through actual inclination. Warren always dominated me, and sometimes I feared him. I remember how I shuddered at his facial expression on the night before the awful happening, when he talked so incessantly of his theory, why certain corpses never decay, but rest firm and fat in their tombs for 1,000 years. But I do not fear him now, for I suspect that he has known horrors beyond my ken. Now I fear for him. Once more I say that I have no clear idea of our object on that night. Certainly, it had much to do with something in the book which Warren carried with him, the ancient book in undecipherable characters which had come to him from India a month before. But I swear I do not know what it was that we expected to find. Your witness says he saw us at 11:30 on the Gainesville Pike, headed for Big Cypress Swamp. This is probably true, but I have no distinct memory of it. The picture seared into my soul is one of scene only, and the hour must have been long after midnight, for a waning crescent moon was high in the vaporous heavens. The place was an ancient cemetery, so ancient that I trembled at the manifold signs of immemorial years. It was in a deep, damp hollow overgrown with rank grass, moss, and curious creeping weeds, and filled with a vague stench which my idle fancy associated absurdly with rotting stone. On every hand were the signs of neglect and decrepitude, and I seemed haunted by the notion that Warren and I were the first living creatures to invade a lethal silence of centuries. Over the valley's rim, a wan, waning crescent moon peered through the noisome vapors that seemed to emanate from unheard-of catacombs, and by its feeble, unwavering beams I could distinguish a repellent array of antique slabs, urns, cenotaphs, and mausoleum facades, all crumbling, moss-grown, and moisture-stained, and partly concealed by gross luxuriance of the unhealthy vegetation. My first vivid impression of my own presence in this terrible necropolis concerns the act of pausing with Warren before a certain half-obliterated sepulchre, and of throwing down some burdens which we seemed to have been carrying. I now observed that I had with me an electric lantern and 2 spades, whilst my companion was supplied with a similar lantern and a portable telephone outfit. No word was uttered, for the spot and the task seemed known to us, and without a delay we seized our spades and commenced to clear away the grass, weeds, and drifted earth from the flat, archaic mortuary. After uncovering the entire surface, which consisted of 3 immense granite slabs, we stepped back some distance to survey the carnal scene, and Warren appeared to make some mental calculations. Then he returned to the sepulchre, using his spade as a lever, sought to pry up the slab lying nearest to a stony ruin which may have been a monument in its last day. He did not succeed, and motioned to me to come to his assistance. Finally, our combined strength loosened the stone, which we raised and tipped to one side. The removal of the slab revealed a black aperture, from which rushed an effluence of miasmal gases so nauseous that we started back in horror. After an interval, however, we approached the pit again and found the exhalations less unbearable. Our lanterns disclosed the top of a flight of some steps, dripping with some detestable ichor of the inner earth, and bordered by moist walls encrusted with nitre. And now, for the first time, my memory records verbal discourse, Warren addressing me at length in his mellow tenor voice, a voice singularly unperturbed by our awesome surroundings. I'm sorry to have to ask you to stay on the surface, he said, but it would be a crime to let anyone with your frail nerves go down there. You can't imagine, even from what you have read and what I've told you, the things I shall have to see and do. It's fiendish work, Carter, and I doubt if any man with ironclad sensibilities could ever see it through and come up alive and sane. I don't wish to offend you, and heaven knows I'd be glad enough to have you with me, but the responsibility is, in a certain sense, mine, and I couldn't drag a bundle of nerves like you down to probable death or madness. I tell you, you can't imagine what the thing is really like, but I promise to keep you informed over the telephone of every move. You see, I've enough wire here to reach to the center of the earth and back. I can still hear in memory those coolly spoken words, and I can still remember my remonstrances. I seemed desperately anxious to accompany my friend into those sepulchral depths, yet he proved inflexibly obdurate. At one time, he threatened to abandon the expedition if I remained insistent, a threat which proved effective, since he alone held the key to the thing. All this I can still remember, though I no longer know what manner of thing we sought. After he had obtained my reluctant acquiescence in his design, Warren picked up the reel of wire and adjusted the instruments. At his nod, I took one of the latter and seated myself upon an aged, discolored gravestone, close by the newly uncovered aperture. Then he shook my hand, shouldered the coil of wire, and disappeared within that indescribable ossuary. For a minute I kept the sight of the glow of his lantern, and heard the rustle of the wire as he laid it down after him. But the glow soon disappeared abruptly, as if a turn in the stone staircase had been encountered, and the sound died away almost as quickly. I was alone, yet bound to the unknown depths by those magic strands whose insulated surface lay green beneath the struggling beams of that waning crescent moon. I constantly consulted my watch by the light of my electric lantern and listened with feverish anxiety at the receiver of the telephone, but for more than a quarter of an hour heard nothing. Then a faint clicking came from the instrument, and I called down to my friend in a tense voice. Apprehensive as I was nevertheless unprepared for the words which came up from that uncanny vault, in accents more alarmed and quivering than any I had heard before, from Harley Warren. He who had so calmly left me a little while previously now called from below in a shaky whisper more portentous than the loudest shriek. God, if you could see what I am seeing! I could not answer. Speechless, I could only wait. Then it came the frenzied tones again. Carter, it's terrible, monstrous, unbelievable. This time my voice did not fail me, and I poured into the transmitter a flood of excited questions. Warren, what is it? Terrified, I continued to repeat. Once more came the voice of my friend, still hoarse with fear, and now apparently tinged with despair. I can't tell you, Carter. It's too utterly beyond thought. I dare not tell you. No man could know it and live. Great God, I never dreamed of this. Stillness again, save for my now incoherent torrent of shuddering inquiry. Then the voice of Warren in a pitch of wilder consternation. Carter, for the love of God, put that slab back and get out of this if you can. Quick, leave everything else and make for the outside. It's your only chance. Do as I say, and don't ask me to explain. I heard, yet was only able to repeat my frantic questions. Around me were the tombs and the darkness and the shadows. Below me, some peril beyond the radius of human imagination. But my friend was in greater danger than I, and though my fear, I felt a vague resentment that he should deem me capable of deserting him under such circumstances. More clicking, and after a pause, a piteous cry from Warren. Beat it! For God's sake, put back the slab and beat it, Carter. Something in the boyish slang of my evidently stricken companion unleashed my faculties. I formed and shouted a resolution. Warren, brace up! I'm coming down. But at this offer, the tone of my auditor changed to a scream of utter despair. Don't! You can't understand. It's too late, and my own fault. Put back the slab and run. There's nothing else you or anyone can do now. The tone changed again, this time acquiring a softer quality of hopeless resignation. Yet it remained tense through the anxiety for me. Quick, before it's too late. I tried not to heed him, tried to break through the paralysis which held me, and to fulfill my vow to rush down to his aid. But his next whisper found me still held inert in the chains of stark horror. Carter, hurry. It's no use. You must go. Better one than two. The slab. A pause, more clicking than the faint voice of Warren. Nearly over now. Don't make it harder. Cover up those damned steps and run for your life. You're losing time. So long, Carter. Won't see you again. Here's Warren's whisper swelled into a cry that gradually rose to a shriek, fraught with all the horror of the ages. Curse these hellish things, legions, my God, beat it, beat it, beat it. After that was silence. I know not how many interminable eons I sat stupefied, whispering, muttering, calling, screaming into that telephone. Over and over again through these eons I whispered and muttered, called, shouted, and screamed, Warren, Warren, answer me. Are you there? And then there came to me the crowning horror of all, the unbelievable, the unthinkable, almost unmentionable thing. I have said that eons seemed to elapse after Warren shrieked forth his last despairing warning, and that only my own cries now broke the hideous silence. But after a while there was a further clicking in the receiver, and I strained my ears to listen. Again I called down, Warren, are you there? And in answer heard the thing which has brought this cloud over my mind. I do not try, gentlemen, to account for that thing, that voice, nor can I venture to describe it in detail, since the first words took away my consciousness and created a mental blank which reaches to the time of my awakening in the hospital. Shall I say that the voice was deep, hollow, gelatinous, remote, unearthly, inhuman, disembodied? What shall I say? It was the end of my experience, and it is the end of my story. I heard it and knew no more. Heard it as I sat petrified in that unknown cemetery in the hollow, amidst the crumbling stones and the falling tombs, the rank vegetation and the miasmal vapors. Heard it well up from the innermost depths of that damnable open sepulchre, as I watched amorphous, necrophagous shadows dance beneath an accursed waning moon. And this is what it said. You fool, Warren is dead. Ooh, that was a good story. Oh, that was excellent. Thank you for the suggestion. Sir Equinox commented headstone. Okay. I'm gonna get on tomorrow and I'm gonna do this again. I can't wait. I guess I'm gonna try for 8 o'clock Central Time. I'll post it in the community tab. I hope you can join. Yes, if you have requests for stories tomorrow, place them in the chat. This was so much fun. Thank you for joining. And I want to do this again tomorrow because I enjoy reading and I haven't live streamed consistently in a while. And I've been like kind of staying in, just practicing for my show upcoming. And I'm not really in the mood to go out a ton, but I do want to live stream. So I would love to get on and do this again. There were a couple of requests that I didn't get to today that I'm going to read tomorrow. I think The Doom That Came to Sarnath was one of them. And I want to read The Dreams in the Witch House because that sounds compelling. The Outsider. Let's see if The Outsider is in here. The Outsider isn't in here, but I can always look it up. I can look it up on my laptop. Thank you so much for joining. I am so glad you guys came to hang out. I'm looking forward to doing this again tomorrow. I'll talk to you soon. Have a wonderful night.